live in an interesting world. You will commonly hear the Jazzles mentioned on television and much more. You will see people politely and proudly portray their religion with symbols around their body and discuss it. But when we reveal the salaries of what people at the BBC were paid, it's a national scandal. And not just because they were very large, and some people were surprised by that, but because we admitted what salaries are. The simple fact, hands up in here if you would feel comfortable broaching with a colleague how much they earned. So even in this room at a Talk Money conference, it's less than 50% of you. Most people wouldn't do it. The real stigma left in our world isn't sex, it isn't religion, it is money, and potentially baldness as well, but we won't discuss that one either. And that does lead us to some quite big problems in our society. If you go to the United States and you take yourself into New York, if you mention you've bought a house, how much? If you mention you got a job, how much? If you mention you paid for a plumber, how much? That's the way that society works. Here we think of that as gauche and rude and inappropriate. But perhaps we could think of it as empowering, enlightening, educative. If you tell me how much your plumber costs, when I next come to get a plumber in the same area, I start to have a reasonable benchmark of the amount I should pay. If you're sitting next to me at work, and this happened to me in my early career, I sat next to a guy who was 8 years older than me. I was relatively junior and but had been there a year longer than him, and he was put on my team, and he had come from a much more profession. I'd come straight from university. We had a discussion about salaries. I was his team leader, and he was earning 3 times as much as I was. And I went to the boss. Ageism didn't exist then. It was before the ageism laws. And I went to the boss at the time, and I asked for a pay rise. I got one, but nowhere near what he was getting. Didn't leave me feeling particularly good, but it did empower me. And starting to have conversations and talk about money, it's about time we got rid of it. Yes, I accept some people might want to have a privacy of what they earn, and we have security issues that come to it. But the idea that talking about money is rude is plain wrong. There, the Americans have it right, and we have it wrong. Because it leads to really damaging problems. There's something coming up. I think it's the 25th of December this year. And when it comes to that festive occasion, people often feel generous, and they like to give to others. And they especially like to give to friends who they know don't have as much as I do. But if I buy you a £50 present, and I'm rich, and you haven't got the money, what happens? Well, you feel obligated to buy me a £50 present. I gave you a £50 pair of socks. I don't care what you bought me. I've effectively obligated you to pay for a £50 pair of socks that you gave me. It's a zero-sum game. Worse, you might be skint, and I don't know about it. Let's go out for dinner. I'm going to have champagne. One for you as well. And I order the champagne, and I don't think about it, and we split the bill, and we have that ridiculous custom that in this country, for some idea, if we went shopping together, we wouldn't try and buy each other what goes on, but when we go out to eat, it's incredibly rude to say, maybe you should pay for what you had. Oh, God, no. Why do we have these social stigmas that are set up that actually work counter to people's financial interests? Because none of us are ballsy enough to say it. So if you're skint and you're at dinner, you should be able to announce to the table and say, you know what, I haven't got much money right now. I'm just going to have the pizza and I'm on the water. And everybody should accept that's what you're going to pay for. And everybody should have in a natural conversation. Yeah, fair enough. It's difficult at the moment, isn't it? I hope it goes well for you. Don't worry. Next time, why don't we go and have dinner at my house where it's a lot cheaper? Why don't we work together to help promote financial sensibility in both of its senses, both being sensible and also being sensitive towards each other? Now, talking money is a really interesting point because it clicks into one of those other big passions of mine. It clicks into mental health. Until recently, mental health was the biggest stigma we have. Funnily enough, I hope we're on the cusp of a turning point where people are actually starting to be able to open up about their mental health. And that's a wonderful thing. It's changed radically in the last 5 years, hasn't it? But we actually need to start to marry that to money, because mental health and money are two things that aren't often talked about, but they do go together. And worse, it's mental health and debt where the real marriage is. The stats from the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute, which I proudly chair, you are roughly 5 times more likely to be in crisis debt if you have a mental health condition. It's thought the treatment time for clinical depression is 18 months longer if you have a financial problem than if you don't have a financial problem. Think about those for a second, especially the last one. Because many people, when they go for mental health counselling or want it, or are using new systems that are developed, have financial problems. But they don't volunteer it. And worse, many of the professionals talking to them don't ask about it. If the treatment time for clinical depression is 18 months longer if you have a financial problem, if you have clinical depression and a financial problem, we should be signposting you towards counselling for your mental health issue and counselling for your financial problem. Unless you join the two up, the system will not work. And frankly, and I'm sorry to say it to some of those of you who are in the room who do it, debt counsellors are cheaper than mental health counsellors. Don't let your mental health counsellor be the person looking after your money. And it happens. We've done a survey on this recently. They don't know where to point you. They start working through your bills. We know there are psychiatrists out there who are spending some of their time and the NHS's time tangibly helping people with their financial situation. What a ridiculous waste of our economy's money. Well done then for caring. But the structure of the system is wrong. And much of this stems back to that simple thing. We've got to talk about money. I would love to live in a society where if you say to a friend, I've got terrible debts at the moment, they go, you want to go to Citizens Advice Bureau or Step Change or National Debt Line or Christians Against Poverty. That's the society that I want to live in. But the society at the moment is you have an awkward, stale conversation, or more likely you don't say it in the first place. Talking about money is powerful. It's essential, and it's made me a very good living. And we need to start to change the way each of us think about it. I know there are only over 200 events on Talk Money going on around the country this week, many of them not organised by this conference. That's brilliant. You have to be at the top of the pyramid for spreading this information and this work, and I know you are all doing it. I want to open up and change the language. I hate the fact that one of the classic jokes I get when I'm doing television on every single channel is they go, I don't understand money. Why do you boast about that? You're a television news presenter. If you said, I don't understand politics, you'd lose your bloody job. Why is it okay to say I don't understand about money? Now, I'm not berating those people who truly don't understand money. I'm berating the boast about not understanding finance. The boast that it's cool to be crap with money. It's not. It's idiotic, and it's detrimental for your life, and you pass it on to your children. We have to break this cycle. Break the cycle of the lack of education that we have. I see young money sitting there. I'm delighted to be working them. This week we announced that we're going to work on the first financial education textbook. I'm very, very proud to be funding it and also incredibly depressed. It is outrageous a private individual should be funding it and not the government when it's on the national curriculum. It's a disgrace, but they're not doing it, so I will. And we're going to get 500,000 textbooks in every school to start talking about money. That in itself will begin to make a difference. Because let us be in no uncertain terms about what this means. If you start to talk about money and understand money more, then it empowers the individual. It also gives them somebody to ask. I'm doing a program on the television next week. Subtext is Ask Me Anything. It's an hour-long program. We'll get thousands and thousands of people, because even if people read information, the one thing they want is they just want someone, whether it's James from an Experian, their credit score, then most of the time they understand it. They just want someone to say, yes, you're right, do it. That's what we want. Someone to take us over the final hurdle. Now, it's fine, I can do it on telly, but I won't come close to answering all the questions. And what we really want is you take that sensible friend who you know, and you talk them through your finances and say, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Does that sound okay to you? Yeah, that sounds all right to me. Well, does it? Yeah, I'm not doing anything stupid. No, I think that sounds perfectly sensible. You could do it another way. It sounds perfectly sensible to me. Oh, thanks, I really value your opinion. No, it's no problem. And it's really fine that I told you about my finances, because it's just a part of living. I'd probably be more likely to tell you about my genital warts than I would about my money. And that isn't right. But it's more than just for the individual, because an individual who understands and is engaged and talks about money, they actually look after their own finances better. But for the financial services community, of which some of you are in here, individuals who are engaged and understand money get more products because they know they need them, because they're not scared, because they're capable of making the decision, because they've got people to talk to who'll get them over the line. And right across the board, if we've got individuals who are more capable with their finances and managing them better, financial services who are better at targeting people's needs because they might actually tell them what's going on, then we have a better economy for all of us to go through. So across the board, we need to be better at talking about money. We need to be brave and loud and proud about discussing finances and not see it as embarrassing and not see it as a problem. Yes, you have a right to your privacy if you want it. But let's start to make a vow from here on. If somebody says to you, how much? Don't think of it as gauche. Think of it as enlightening. Thank you.